My name is Debbie, OwlandGatorStitcher. Welcome to Flosstube number 20. Today is Thursday, October 14th, 2021. If this is your first time here, welcome. I hope you'd like what you see and click on the subscribe button. And if you're a returning viewer, thank you for coming back. I really enjoy getting all of your comments and interacting with all of you. This is a video mainly about cross stitch, sometimes a little bit about what I'm watching and reading and what's going on in my life. Right now in my life, nothing too exciting going on. In my cross-stitching world, Facebook games world, I have recovered from the plague. I had that for about 24 hours, and thank you to all my teammates and even other people who came over and helped me to recover from that. This is a big reason why I do the games. I love this sense of community, especially at this time when getting a sense of interaction with people in the real world is sometimes a little bit more difficult. I'm in Florida. While our COVID numbers are going down, I still am not comfortable going out into large groups and doing things like that. So I'm very happy to have my cross-stitch community to keep me company and give me that sense. Before I jump in to show you my stitching, I just want to do a shout out for the Under 1000 Subs Club. This week I'd like to highlight Angela, the Aida lover. I think that's what her Flosstube name is. She has a lot of really great projects going on, and as you can guess by her name, she does most of them on Aida. She however has ventured into the world of trying some things on linen, so go check her out. She has a lot of really lovely stitching and she's just really fun to watch. So what have I been working on for the past couple of weeks? It's been about 2 weeks since my last video. I have 2 finishes. I know that's very shocking, but as you know, for October I'm trying to get some of my smaller pieces out of the way so that I can start 2022 with, I don't want to say a clean slate because I'll never have a clean slate, but some of these smaller pieces that have been lingering for a year or more. So the first piece I want to show you, I showed this last video as well. This is We Are the Same by Beth at Heartstring Samplery. This was a piece that she designed, as many of you might recall, after George Floyd was murdered. A lot of designers came up with patterns to emphasize diversity and inclusion and things like that. And so this is the pattern that Beth came up with. Basically, she came up with 3 colorways, and they either required white, black, or beige fabric. And of course, being me, I chose something from my stash that didn't fit any of that. So this is a 28 count gray fabric called Dapple. I don't know what who produced it. So basically, because I think the letters were originally done charted in grits, and it wouldn't have come up well on this fabric. And you can see it in some of the faces here, and that's fine for there, but I wanted the words to stand out a little bit more. So this is 3765. The flowers and the people are all the called on colors, except for some of the green here. She called for gassed lily pad. I didn't have that. And I couldn't find it when I was looking for it, so I just subbed in 580, which I thought was a pretty 580 from DMC. I thought it was a pretty close match. So here is this finish number 1, and she did do it without the border, and I did think about repeating the border down here, but then in the end I decided not to. So that is the first finish I have. My second finish, and let me see if I can find something to put against the back of this, because it's a very flimsy fabric. This is Cozy Cardinals from Just Cross Stitch, December 2020, I believe. So this was one I started at the very end of last year in preparation for No New Starts, because I knew I was going to use it for one of my magazine monthly challenges. And I had done the minimum of basically getting 200 stitches in, which was basically a border, or part of the border, and that was it. I then didn't touch this for over 6 months until it came up for the challenge for the magazine monthly challenge, and I think I set a goal of 500 stitches, which I had put in, but then I didn't pick it up. But then I decided, you know what, this is a small piece, I can get it done. But of course, pieces are never as small as you think they are. And so almost 3,000 stitches later, I finally finished this. This has a lot of personalizations. Most notably, when I picked this up again, when I started the tail here of the bird, I started a stitch, I think a stitch over from where it would be, and 150 stitches later, I wasn't going to pull it all out when I caught my mistake. So I just left it there, and originally I thought, okay, I'll complete this bird. When I do this bird, I'll just pull it one stitch in and make the modifications to the branches and the pine cone. And then as I was starting to think about it, I said, why do I need to make those modifications? I had not finished the border. I had done about half of this top thing. Did bring this all the way down, but hadn't done the bottom part, and it was a mistake over. I'm like, why don't I just extend the border by one stitch, and then everything else will be work out well. So that's exactly what I did. So, you know, sometimes looking at things with a fresh face actually helps them a lot. So I am very happy with the way this turned out. I will say the fabric, you can see down here under the paper, it is very flimsy, very see-through. So it wasn't the easiest thing to stitch with. You know, get up a little bit closer, not necessarily my favorite stitches, especially for those snowflakes, which are done in a light blue, and up close and personal, you can tell they're not some of my best stitching. I think a lot of that has to do with the fabric, but when you look at it in the camera, I think it comes up really nicely, and you're not supposed to, you know, they're meant to be the background, and obviously the focus is meant to be on the birds. So I think that once I do something to fully finish this, I will be fine with it. And I also will say, looking at it in person, actually you know, when I look straight on, it's not great, but the second that I sort of turn it as an angle, which is not going to come up on the camera, as soon as I turn it up on an angle, the stitches actually look much better and you can see it. So having that three dimensions really does help it. So definitely whenever I fully finish this, I'll be putting some batting behind it to puff it out to help make the stitches stand out a little bit more. Also, if anyone has any yellow cardinals where they live, let me know. We have a lot of cardinals where I live, and I see them out quite a bit, but we have sort of the standard red male cardinals, and then the females are sort of a grayish brown with like undertones of red, but never any cardinals. They don't have any yellow on them where I live, and certainly nothing this bright. So anyhow, that's my second finish, and I'm really glad to get this one off my list. So that's it for the finishes, but as you know, that's two more than I usually have. So the next pieces I'll show you are ones that I have worked on. So one I show every time, this is Cats in the Toy Box by Heaven Earth Designs, artwork by Lesley Anne Ivory. So I'm working over here, and you can see this kitty here has, you know, very pale head, but then a very dark back. And I did a lot of work on that kitty. So here's where I am now. So again, here's the light head of the kitty, and a lot of these stitches in here are working on the cat's dark spine. I also did put a lot of stitches into whatever that is. I'm not sure if that's supposed to be a llama or a donkey or whatever, but put a lot of stitches into that. And of course, from time to time, I will pull colors that are in the border here. I've done all the block stitching obviously in this border, and now they're just sort of random stitches, or random colors that may be like 3 stitches over here, but then they'll be pulled and I can use them over here. So again, still loving this. This is my focus piece. I've probably put in 2,000 to 3,000 stitches since the last time I showed this. Next piece that I did not show this last time, because even though I try and work on it almost every day, during the month of September, I was really focused on AB Singo and didn't, this one, when I was trying to get a quick 100 stitches in, I was tended to do the AB Singo and not this one. So this is Artecy's Old World Map. This is a large version of it. So not too much change from last time. The big thing is that I just basically, I'm really proud of the fact that I am working on this almost every day. I made a challenge for myself. I want to move this Q-snap by the end of the year. I know I will not have all the stitching. There's quite a few, I never know if they're Rogue or Ninja stitches in here. There are quite a few things that I need to get, but even if I got the Q-snap like moved over here, then there, you know, this is an 11 by 17 Q-snap. There's a lot of area in there. So I sort of said, okay, where's the bottom for me? I'm doing this on Pattern Keeper, so it's sort of an arbitrary. So I sort of said down here is about the line where it's still comfortable to stitch. Below that, I might be getting a little too close to the Q-snap and it gets to be uncomfortable. So I have been picking colors from here and sort of doing it here. And then a lot of these colors obviously will pull into the arc of the map. the top of the map, and then random colors in here as well. So it's been mainly mostly golds with a few browns thrown in, but it's just sort of, it's nice to sort of fill in some of those holes and make that my focus rather than sort of doing it for a challenge and saying, okay, here's a good place where I can take a picture and they can see progress on my stitches. So going back and doing some fill-in. So Old World Map by Artecy. Next one is A Year at Hawkhorn Hollow by Carriage House Samplings. And I am going down, so I am in the July block here. I needed to stitch on something with a ship, so this is an easy one. So I pulled this out, and basically what I did, this is a couple who are standing on a hill, so I basically did like their hair, and then the colors here, and then a little bit like the flag staff, and then the reflection of the flag there. I still need to put in about another 100 stitches to complete the challenge, but that will be relatively easy to finish that challenge. So again, this one comes out for a lot of the challenges simply because it has so many great objects if you're looking for something to put them in. Now, when I had the plague, the way that it worked in the game was if you, it's sort of like a D&D style, Dungeons and Dragons style game where there's a sort of a master of the game. She's spent a lot of time setting it up, and basically there are different, you have a team and you can go exploring, and if you want to buy things, and all this is stitches. And but we kept getting warned, there's a plague in the city, there's a plague in the city, and so we finally took off and left the city, and have taken refuge in an abbey. And even though we stitched and got ourselves some herbal remedies to try ward off the plague, it wasn't enough apparently for me. She rolled a die and said, okay, you've got the plague. We had 20, like a fully healthy person had 20 points. I lost 5 points immediately, and then every hour I didn't heal. I lost, I got sicker and I lost another healing point. And we needed to do 100 stitches to get those healing points back. This happened midday yesterday for me, but a lot of my team is in Europe. And so I'm not a really fast stitcher, and they did do quite a bit, and I did try quite a bit as well, but it wasn't enough, and then we all were asleep and the hours kept ticking, so I lost quite a bit of time. But this morning people from other teams came over and helped me, and so that was really grateful. And I also threw in another couple 100 stitches on what I think is my fastest thing to stitch, and that is Little Cake Shop, Heaven and Earth Designs, artwork by Aimee Stewart. So this is the max color, regular size, but I, again, there are places in this that there are a lot of chunks of color that do go very quickly. This is a 22 count hardangers, and I'm doing it 1/1. And so what I did, and this was this morning, I basically took some of the brown from the molding in the roof, and so I just was able to go down there, and then I did some pink in here that was missing to go in. And there may have been a few stitches that I matched this color up here that I did in here, but I didn't really want to spend a lot of time down here because this is very heavy confetti stitching. There may be 4 or 5 colors in this, a color with 4 or 5 stitches, and then that color is nowhere else sort of in the area that I'm stitching right now. So I even though I really do want to get this window or poster, I'm not entirely sure what it is, I would like to get that done by the end of the year. Time was of the essence to save myself, and so I just said, okay, I'm going to do some really quick stitching, and that's why I chose the colors that I did. So again, this was between finishing this morning and the help of all my teammates and some other friends, I was able to get healed, and we overstitched, and we were able to donate points to someone else whose character was almost dead on another team. So very, very happy about that. The next one I worked on was the tea table, and this is an older pattern. I believe it's Serendipity Designs. It's not one that I know that's publishing anymore. You can tell this is like a 90s style with the coloring, and part of me said this isn't that big, and then I looked at it and it's like 246 by 246. It's not a perfect or maybe a little bit shorter, maybe 246 by 286 or something. Obviously it's not full coverage because even over here, the white of your fabric is coming out. There's no white stitches here. I mean, obviously like in the teapot there is. But when I looked at that, I'm like, that is actually pretty big, even for a non-full coverage. And so that's why it's taking me, I don't work on it that often. But when I do, I always feel like I'm not making any progress when I do. And then on top of it all, I realized I needed to frog. So what I had decided I was going to do was work on the teapot rather than work on the flowers. I had already, last time I worked on it, pulled some of like I had colors here and started working on the teapot. And I said, why don't I get the teapot in place, because it's much easier to count off of that than it is from the flowers, because the way that the colors are in the flowers, it's sort of hard to know exactly where I am. And so I had already done some of the darker lavender color here. I pulled in, so I think that it's 210, DMC 210, pulled in DMC 211, which is just a little bit lighter, and then some here is a blended thread of 211 and white. But then I discovered that I had made a mistake. I pulled this out last time in August for a Survivor event where we were stitching for time, and I had a bunch, you can kind of see it here a little bit, all the way down here. This is working on the spout of the teapot, and I was off, and I really want to make sure the teapot is done properly because I do want to use it to count off of, and so I didn't want to make that kind of mistake. If there's a mistake internally, I probably would fudge it, but I didn't want to have it on the outside. So after I got the stitches I needed, I frogged a bunch of them here, probably over 100 stitches. So I want to make sure I get those stitches done before I put this away for the rest of the month. So the tea table. Next piece I want to show you is another Artecy piece. This is High Intensity, based on, I believe it's actually it's artwork by Agnew. That might be a photograph. This is the cropped version that I was able to purchase from Artisy. This is one of my whip go pieces, and so I put in a few hundred stitches so far. Again, basically I am pulling colors from down here, and as I need them, I'm pulling over here. This is over the halfway point all the way across, so I'm getting a good, I just want to sort of take it, and again, ideally, I usually keep this on the Q-snap, and the next time I take it off, I want to be able to move the Q-snap, which is why I'm pulling colors from down here and then working them across. So it's sort of hard to tell. Obviously, this is the tail. You can now start to see one of the jaguar's hind legs. At first I was getting frustrated because I'm like, I can't, I kind of see it here and then it stops, and then I looked at the picture, and of course the rest of his hind leg is covered by this leafy green stuff, which is why I don't see it in the picture, so not frustrated anymore. So this is a fun stitch. It's actually relatively quick. This is a 14 count Aida, so larger than I usually use, but also it's great when my eyes are tired and I can just stitch really quickly on it. Last piece that I stitched on that I will show you. This is Swan Lake by Al Forrest Embroidery. And when I pulled this out, I love working on this, but sometimes other pieces take priority. And when I pulled it out this month, I took a look at it. I have a stitch card in there that shows the days that I stitched on it. And I realized it had been almost 6 months since I had worked on this, which was never my intention. This was not in timeout or anything. It just, for whatever reason, when I wanted to stitch something, it didn't come up. I do have to use a magnifier, so I tend to be a little bit limited on when I can stitch it. I won't stitch it in the evenings or during the day if we're watching football, and I'm watching with my husband, so because then I have to move my whole magnifier. It's a floor mount magnifier. So, but here's where I am now. So what I had done, I had most of the dancers done here, and this water done here, and I really wanted to get the two swans done. So they are fully completed, including their beaks and their eyes. And then I also realized that my ballerina, well, she had her face, she didn't have the rest of her head, so I stitched in her cap that she was wearing. I then came down and started working on these sort of flower motifs down here, And I know that I have a mistake in this water here. It's 1 stitch, I believe, too high. And so there's a little bit more water here, but I didn't want to finish that. I'll get this flower motif in. I'll finish the water motif after I get these flowers in, and then I will be able to sort of, just know that I can't count off the water. There is the swan, as it's charted, is not sitting directly on the water. There's a row of stitches in between that, and which you can't really see it here, or yeah, you can kind of see it here, that there is a gap between the swan and this strand, ripple, wave, whatever of water, and you don't have it on this one. Don't know how well you can see that. The swan is directly sitting on the water. But I made the decision that I'd rather have the swans, because they are symmetrical. I wanted to make sure that they were at the same level, whereas the water is not symmetrical in the pattern. And so I thought it would be less jarring to the eye. Now, right now, obviously, because I've got much more stitching on this side, it's hard to tell, but when it fills in, I really just want to make sure that that it's more pleasing to the eye to have those swans be perfectly matched. So that is all the stitching that I want to show you that I've done for the past 2 weeks. A little bit about my plans. So I still want to continue working on some of my smalls. And so the first thing I will show you, and I've got to mark the page. There we go. This little cute one here. This is from an old issue of Cross Stitch and Country Craft. These are 2 little bears. And here is where I am now. So obviously got the hat completely done, including the back stitching, and this the big bear's head, and a little bit of her dress, and then a little bit on the baby bear. So the cross stitching, I always say it's not that much. It probably is more than I think it is. But nonetheless, I think what's might slow me down and make it that I don't meet my goal on this is that there's a lot of back stitching in this. It's from the 90s. That's what it is. I don't mind doing back stitching, but as you all know, it takes more time, and it's like almost like, in order to get sort of, I guess, the folds on her dress, it's like between, every column of stitches, it's like there's back stitching going back and forth. So there will be a lot, and so if it gets to the point where I think this is just it's getting to be too much and I'm not doing other things, I might decide that is one that will not get finished this month, but it just means that whenever I go back to finish it next time, I'll be that much closer to getting it done. So my other whip-go piece, I showed you the Jaguar High Intensity. I still have more stitches to get my whip-go goal, which is 1,000. I also have another one charted by Artecy Green Dancer, and this one, my goal is 1,000 stitches as well. So here's where I am on that, and so I will plug away on this one as well. This is my smallest full coverage, and I've got there's 3 pages up here that are already done, and this is the width of the pattern, so it's not very wide. It's longer than it is, much longer than it is high. And these are the next 3 pages. So 1,000 stitches will get me quite far on this. And again, it's a print pattern, but whenever I purchased it, it was the large print, and so the pages actually are not that big. They're not overwhelming in terms of stitch count. So again, I think the pages probably end somewhere here. This actually goes down then on to I think it's page 9. So 4, 5, 6. I'm already here. So I'd like to say I'm a third done already, although it's always hard to tell. So 1,000 stitches will actually get me quite far on that pattern. And then the last thing for my plans I'd like to show you. This is for the Magazine Monthly Challenge. The theme is Kaleidoscope. So here is the picture. And Kaleidoscope, they just said pick on anything colorful. I thought the flowers are really colorful. So here's where I am now on this. And my goal is to finish this birdhouse here and then do another birdhouse. It sort of sits on top of these vines here, and do that there. So that would be my goal for that. So that is all of my plans. I'm sure lots of things will be thrown in for my various challenges, and I'll figure it out as I go along. In terms of purchases, I only have one thing I'd like to show you. And as I mentioned before, I do have a new local needlework shop that's in my town, and her location wasn't great, and she realized that, and so she moved it. So it's in the same part of town, but it's a much better storefront. Whereas like the other one was a shared space with some other, not stores, but like service providers and, you know, professionals. And so it was hard, you know, it was a solid door, so you couldn't see inside what it was. There were windows. But then also, like the landlord insisted on keeping the door locked. So if you were a customer, you couldn't just walk in. You had to like knock or call ahead of time. And this new place is, you know, it's got a glass door, which is very exciting. And it's her own space. And it's Victorian Rose Needle Arts. And she does have a very active online presence. She was an online store well before she opened up the storefront. So if you, yeah, I'm always encouraging people to go take a look at what she has, simply because, you know, the more she sells, the more likely she is to stay in business. And especially if you like samplers, she has a great collection of samplers. She has some kits with samplers. She has charted a few of her own. The reason why I went was one, I needed some Krynic for Heaven and Earth Designs. I knew I was going to run out of the Krynic. Haven't used it yet because, you know, I have to really be in the right frame of mind to stitch with Krynic. But they had the color and the braid that I needed. But yeah, well, no thread can travel alone. Even if you go to the store, that is the same thing, but it's traveling home in the car with me. So I bought a chatelaine. I've wanted to get one for a long time. So this is Victorian Garden. And I have no idea when I'm going to start this. I don't have the materials. You know, I've taken a look at European cross stitch to see what the material packs are for this. Obviously, there's a whole big list in the back. So I haven't decided yet if I'm going to try and kit it myself or if I'm going to buy the kit. But still, I'm glad I have one because I do want to do one and have a chance to work on it. So that is my chatelaine. That is it for the stitching content. I do want to talk a little bit about what I am watching and reading. So the first thing that I want to talk about is a book that I finished. This is The Charm Offensive by Alison Cochrane. This was a giveaway I won on Goodreads. I do enter quite a few giveaways. For that, I've gotten more selective, in fact, because I've gotten some real duds from it. So I've been more selective on what I have picked from, you know, which giveaways I enter. But I chose to enter this one. This is basically, it's an LBGT romance, but it's more, how to put it? It's more, I don't want to say more complicated than that. It's not. A romance is a romance. But she does explore a lot of different issues. And so the basic premise of the book is there's a show. It's a fictitious show, but it's like The Bachelor for all intents and purposes. And the guy here chooses to go on the show. And this guy is one of the producers who is basically his handler. And so, you know, from the cover, the romance is between them. But this is like The Bachelor, as far as I'm aware. I don't actually watch much reality TV. But it's all of the potential suitors are female. And so where I had some trouble with this book, and this is on me, not on the book, is that I can't, that here is, he's always described as this really, really good looking guy. He's Silicon Valley. He's had started a company. He's a really great techie. Had, lots and lots of money he made. And then he got forced out of his company. All this happens before the story, so you find out about it. And he basically goes on this show as a way to revive his career. I don't know enough about reality TV. I do know they get some celebrities to go on, but I'm not sure how that would revive someone's career in tech. And on top of all of that, he has got sort of anxiety issues, and he has a very hard time getting close to anyone. And that sort of whole dynamic makes me wonder, like, I have a hard time, with anyone who has those phobias that thinks it's a good idea to go on a reality TV show where you're supposed to find the love of your life. And then on top of it all, he doesn't realize that he's gay until he starts to go on the show and he falls in love with his producer. And who the producer knows that he's gay, and he knows that he's working in this environment, but he is a romantic and he believes in love ever after and all that. So it took me a really long time to sort of get over that premise, that someone who had so many issues would think it would be a good idea. And again, I don't want to say issues like in a bad way, but if you don't like to be touched and you want to go into a technical world, you're not a celebrity necessarily, and you want to, and you're in your late 20s and you don't realize that you're gay yet. Lots of issues about why would you go on this show? But nonetheless, I think once I finally got over that, and it took me like over half the book to get over that, I did really enjoy it. And I think the author does a lot to explore not just, a standard gay romance, but she has some of the bachelorettes, or whatever, they're not bachelorettes, but the potential princesses is I think what they call them. Some of them, they have their reasons for going on the show, and some of their, some of it, is that they also are, they might be heterosexual, but they also have a really hard time being close enough to someone to have a romantic relationship with them, or that they are realizing that they might be bisexual. But that sort of realization and sort of how reality TV sort of distorts and takes, 80 hours of footage and condenses it into a 45-minute show, and what you're actually seeing is what the producers want you to see and not what actually happened. So once I got over that issue, I did enjoy this. If you're looking for that kind of, it is a romance at the end of the day, and the two guys are going to end up together because that's what happens in romances. I don't think I'm giving too much of a spoiler by saying that, but to me, it's always about the journey. How is the journey that they get there? And if I find that I learned something from that journey, reading the journey, I really do appreciate it. And I did feel that once she really started getting into some of those issues, and again, not just about the two of them, but about the other characters in the book, that she fleshes out quite a few of them. I really did appreciate having that perspective. So if we're looking for that kind of book, I recommend The Charm Offensive. In terms of what I have been watching, my husband and I watched a program, I believe it's Netflix, I think it came out in 2018, I'm not entirely sure, but it's a show called Unbelievable. I think it is based on a true story, but it is basically about a serial rapist. And it sort of goes back and forth between two timelines. So there is a case in 2008 in Washington State, and there's a girl who is, she's like 18, I think, who is raped, a young woman. And this is a stranger rape, so there's no question of like a date rape or anything. But she is someone who grew up in the foster system, had acted out at times, and basically she reports the rape. The police initially take it seriously, but then basically they come around and sort of force her to say that she was not raped and she was lying about the rape. And so, and then it sort of moves forward to 2011, and there's a police detective in Colorado who gets called out for a rape in her community where she serves, and she spends a lot of time talking with the victim. And her husband happens to be a police officer in another community, and so they sort of pillow talk, and he says, that sounds a lot like a case that we have, and so she meets with the detective on that case, and they start piecing it together. Really, really powerful. The actresses in this, the three lead ones are Toni Collette, Caitlin Dever, and Merritt Weaver. They provide really powerful performances. I would also say that this show does not glorify rape. I think a lot of things that talk about rape, they say they want to show the rape because they want to show the violence, but sometimes you think that they're showing it because they think, oh, well, people will be more likely if they, see what they think is sex, even if it's violent sex. This doesn't show that. I mean, there are flashbacks. Caitlin Dever's character, who's the first rape victim, that like it's almost like snapshots, but you don't see much. And so I really appreciate that they treat all of the rape victims in this with respect. They also show that it's not pretty young women who are the victims, but there were some older women, some overweight women, and that basically it became clear that the victims were chosen based on the fact that they lived alone, they had routines, they were easy targets for someone who wanted to get into their home and rape them. And so I found it to be a very compelling watch. I also like that that it's a lot of procedurals. You meet the person who committed the crime. You meet them at some point in the story, so you can sort of guess who it is. And this was not done this way. That you don't get to see the life of the suspect until the police basically figure out who the suspect is. And I really appreciate that because it's not about them. This is about showing respect for the rape victims and what they went through and the hard work of the detectives, and let's not glorify the rapists at all. And I know rape is a very complicated crime, but nonetheless, I really liked the show. It was not something we could binge watch in a couple of nights. It's a very serious, heavy topic. But nonetheless, I thought it was very well done. And so if you're looking for something, again, it's called Unbelievable. Well, that is all I have for you today. I hope that you enjoyed this video. If you did and you are not a subscriber yet, please click on that subscribe button. And I should be back in 2 weeks or so. Thank you. Bye.